healing. Welcome back to Avaya, Dr. Ameet.
Thank you, Andy. Really excited to dive into really the nuances of homeopathy, why it's so powerful for trauma healing, as well as family constellations therapy, very special therapy to heal ancestral trauma and family entanglements, which we often don't see as trauma.
Let's start there. So, what is it? First off, what is ancestral trauma?
Ancestral trauma is basically trauma that happens to our parents, to our ancestors, to our family members, yeah, including to our siblings. And epigenetics has shown that we actually inherit family trauma. Yeah, it shows up in our DNA. Studies have shown, survivors of the Holocaust, for example, or descendants of survivors of the Holocaust, or even of 9/11, have an altered physiology that kind of mimics the experience that their ancestors experienced during those difficult times. So they're more prone to anxiety, depression, OCD, low self-worth, guilt, suicidal thoughts, depending on what happened to the ancestors, right? If it was a gas chamber or if it was, torture, suffocation, just shock, terrorist attacks, whatever, that kind of programs our nervous system to change. And you can imagine it scientifically is, if your mom is carrying before you're born or before you conceive, your grandmother and your mom is carrying like cells, right? Eggs that have the mitochondria and DNA that will eventually produce you. And when they go through any physiological stress or trauma, their physiology changes and therefore their DNA changes. And therefore that will alter, of course, the quality and the response or the resonance of their eggs of which you are born. So you being born will be born of an altered resonance based on their emotional and physiological experiences. And so ancestral trauma can be anything from, being murdered, victims of war. And one of the most common traumas that is often not talked about is miscarriages and abortions as well. They happen quite often in our family. And in family constellations therapy, we have certain rules that we kind of like to respect. And when those rules are broken in a family system, it leads to entanglements or hidden traumas. And we'll go through each of those rules one by one so people are clear of what they can heal and why they're getting anxiety, depression, OCD, and other chronic illnesses. Yeah. So, for example, let's go back to miscarriages and abortions. It's one of my favorite examples because it's easy to understand. If your mom, those of you who are listening, if your mom or dad or somebody in the family system had a miscarriage or abortion, and that child is not acknowledged, and you think you're the first child or the second child, yeah, based on your existing siblings. If you don't acknowledge that missing child, you are basically assuming the wrong position in your family. You think you're second or you're first. And I've seen it time and time again. People will have anxiety, a sense of guilt, a sense of like, I have to work really hard, I have to live up to unmet expectations because they're kind of living the first child's position and it's not theirs. So those of you listening, I invite you to actually experiment. If you know there's a miscarriage or abortion, I'd like you to actually imagine that child before you. Yeah, so imagine your parents there in front of you, then that child coming next, and then you. And then you can say, dear sibling, you came first. I'm in the second or third position. Dear mom and dad, I like to be seen as the second child from now on. Yeah. My dear brother, my dear sister has the first or belongs in the first position. I honor that soul. Those kind of healing sentences, that's what we do in family constellation therapy. These sentences free up your nervous system. Yeah. It'll free you up so much that I've seen chronic disease disappear, including cancer, literally from healing sentences. Chronic anxiety, people are taking GABA, they're doing homeopathy, which we're going to talk about, they're doing psychotherapy, but there's always this underlying anxiety. And when you do family constellation therapy, and I cover a lot of these healing sentences in my course on family constellations, chronic issues melt away. It's unbelievable because family trauma is like the root cause, yeah, and causing an energetic influence on our emotions and our physiology. Another typical trauma that we have often experienced is, let's say mom is being abused by dad. And so we often take the side of mom. or the weaker parent. It could be dad, it could be mom. And we reject the other parent. Typically, it's dad. We reject dad, either for his violence or his affairs or neglect or things like that. And so that's a natural response, right? It comes out of love. But that love costs us dearly. Yeah. In constellation work, we say the cost of this love is either sadness, it's blocking ourselves from other people, other relationships. That the cost of love is blocking us from loving our father or the other parent. Yeah. And that can lead to depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, low immunity. I've seen that often as well, and liver stagnation, especially when we reject the father, liver issues. And so, a healing sentence we can do in this scenario is like, Dear mom, you know, um, even if it costs me my happiness and my relationship with my father, I will be on your side. I will be with you. I will take on your suffering with you. And then you get an awareness of how much it's costing you. And once you go into that awareness, then it's easier for you to say a deeper healing sentence, which could be, Dear mom, please forgive me if I look at dad as my parent as well. Or Dear mom, please forgive me if I I let this be by the side, let your grief, your anger, your sadness, your rejection, your low self-worth. I see all of it with you. Forgive me if I leave it with you and I accept you with it fully. So now you understand what belongs to your mother and not to you. That's very important. And once you're clear about that, you're more free to live your life and you end up in happier relationships. You have better self esteem. You're more likely to ask what you really want rather than saying, oh, I don't deserve that, or you sabotage your own happiness. So I find self sabotage a very common symptom of a family entanglement. Okay. So the orders of love, let's go through them again. The rules. One is everyone needs to be included, whether it's the miscarried or aborted child, whether it's an ex-lover of one of your parents, we need to honor those people. Whether it's a abandoned family member who was a drunkard, an alcoholic, a murderer, whatever, and they're avoided, we need to give them a place in the system. Once we acknowledge them, saying, Dear uncle, you were an abuser and you still belong in this family, then you include all the energy of your family system. And when you realize that you can include all your energy, it doesn't mean you have to accept abuse. Yeah. It's just including all people who belong. You get a more complete sense of your own DNA because our DNA is interconnected. Yeah. Our DNA is like radars. They pick up on the DNA of all of our siblings and our relatives and people who are affected by our relatives. There's a name for it. It's not coming to me right now. But our ability to pick up on the environment through our DNA and our cells now, it's becoming more and more proven.
Mm-hmm.
So that's including everyone. Yeah. And we say, I give you a place in my heart. Yeah. Because if your dad has an ex-lover and you reject that ex-lover, in a way you reject your dad's longing and love for another person. Yeah. And that longing and love belongs to your father. And if you begin to reject parts that belong to your father, you're rejecting your father. And when we reject our father or any other parent, then often we go into low self-esteem because in a way we're kind of rejecting a source of our own life. We often feel there's something wrong in us as well because our father is not perfect. So if you're struggling with low self-esteem and chronic trauma or chronic mental issues, think about who you're rejecting and what you're not accepting in one of your parents and how you're really entangled with other family traumas. The second order is the order of hierarchy. And this I explain in the online course as well very clearly. Yeah. Hierarchy. Mom and dad come first, then the next sibling, then the next sibling in order of birth. And also in order of when they appeared in the family system's life. So your parents' ex-partners, yeah, so your dad's ex-partner came before he met your mom. She came first on that side of the lineage. And your mom's first partner, she came before your dad. That needs to be acknowledged so you feel a bit more relaxed and settled. Without acknowledging these people, we have an inner conflict, a subconscious conflict we're not aware of until it's brought to your awareness, to our awareness. It's like being in a noisy room, not realizing it's noisy until you step out and you're like, gosh, it was noisy in there. That's the beauty of family constellations therapy and doing this course with the healing sentences, because you release these subconscious entanglements and then you feel free. And then you have a more clear picture of who you are, what you deserve, and there's less anxiety, depression, burnout. The third order of love, of course, is the order of balance and balance of giving and taking. So our parents give to us. So in return, we either pass on life to more children, or we do good in society. We do charitable work. We pass on the gift. Or if you're in a relationship, and we've talked about this often, if one partner gives too much because it's a codependent relationship, and you are just receiving, 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 it creates an imbalance. Yeah. And you might feel guilt at a certain level for not giving back, or there might be resentment from the other partner. And one of you will end up having an affair or sabotaging the relationship. So it's important to also give or give more than you're given. So one partner gives, I don't know, I was going to say a cake, but that's not healthy, but a carrot, let's say. You give them zucchini and carrots and celery. You know, it brings a beautiful dynamic to the relationship. Yeah. And also, if a partner hurts you, I know this is a bit controversial, but often we say, hurt back a little, a little more. Like say, okay, you know what? No, I won't put up with this. And this is my kind of semi-revenge. It's not to harm the relationship, it is to give back what was given. So it kind of, how do I say it? It kind of resolves the initial betrayal. I'm not saying you have to have an affair if somebody else has an affair, but honor the anger and aggression you have in you, because that will actually restore balance. A lot of people feel guilty for feeling anger, and they say, okay, I should forgive my partner. And they say the words, I forgive you. But then when you say, I forgive you to a partner, that partner is always the perpetrator and you're always the victim. It's never, the imbalance is never fully resolved. But if you can say to your partner, I'm sorry this happened between you and I, and I see what you've done, and I'm willing to take my place in this, or I'm willing to take responsibility for my own healing and self-love and respect, and I need space from you right now. Little things like that. Each person's individual, yeah? Or you can even swear or something like F off, that really hurt. Who knows what the right sentence is in the moment. At least you express how you feel and where you're at. And then through constellation dialogue, we bring a deeper resolution so that there's less problems in the future. Because if things are swept under the carpet, they end up as arguments in the future. So you're arguing about spilt milk or, things not being clean, but it actually stems from the initial trauma, the initial betrayal.
Got it. Thank you.
So that's a summary of constellation work and the power of healing sentences. Actually, I want to give one more example. So I had a client with stomach cancer, and it started 3 months after she found out her father had an affair, and she couldn't swallow it or stomach it or digest it. And she rejected her father and really protected her mother and resented her father. And she didn't realize the connection between that and the cancer. But when I asked her, okay, what's going on? When did it start? And we did some healing sentences for her. I got her to say, dear dad, it's costing me my life to reject you. Dear mom, please forgive me if I receive father as my father once again, and respect that the two of you had a betrayal that I cannot be a part of right now. Yeah. And there were other healing sentences we used. No kidding. Within 6 months, I think her tumor markers dropped below, they were at 4,000 and they dropped significantly. We combined it with some homeopathy and diet changes, but the biggest transformation for her, and she also says this, is the family constellations therapy we did.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love your whole explanation in the last few minutes of this, and the different levels it can work on for people. And I think it's so important to address all these different things that I think a lot of us don't think about. Maybe there's people watching right now who are suspect they've had some kind of childhood trauma. Maybe they don't totally remember, but maybe there's a lot of that ancestral stuff going on that they're not even aware of. Or like I think back to my childhood and never really considered why it would be important for me to honor that my mom had a miscarriage for her first pregnancy. And then she had my brother, and then she had me. So yeah, really interesting to take a deep dive into that stuff that I think a lot of us don't even ever think that, oh, well, that can't have affected me, or that can't be impacting me today. So I appreciate you going into that. And then of course the health benefits of these healing sentences as well.
Yeah, they're important, because disease is stubborn, and we're taking supplements, we're changing our diet, but if the family entanglement is causing the disease, the family entanglement needs to be healed to resolve the disease more fully.
Mm. Got it. And you mentioned a couple times in there about anxiety, depression, like mental health challenges. Can you share a little bit about the link between unhealed trauma and anxiety and depression, and then go into some homeopathy as it relates to healing that?
Absolutely. So anxiety and depression stem from multiple places, yeah? One is our own. Let's say mom abandoned us, yeah? So I grew up in boarding school. I felt abandoned. I was bullied by many people. I had a lot of low self-esteem growing up, yeah? So I always felt unsafe as well. And the teachers, it was a British boarding school, so the teachers were mean and aggressive. And so I grew up with a lot of fear, and that created some anxiety for me. At the same time, there can be anxiety from an ancestral entanglement. Let's give one example. So when my mom was pregnant with me, or just when I was born, her father died. So in a way, she had a lot of grief, and that grief occupies my mother's heart. Yeah, and so in a way, I will feel a bit of a gap between me and my mother. She doesn't do it on purpose, but that gap will give me a sense of incompleteness, not good enough, a sense of emptiness. So I'll always try to be doing things to fulfill that until I can recognize, dear mom, I needed you. Yeah. I missed you when you were looking at your dying father or your dead father. Yeah, I can even feel that right now in my body, and my tears want to come out because it's the first time I've said such words. But yeah, I don't know if people can feel that, but things are clearing right now for me, and I'm really touched by that. And so what's clearing for me is I'm just feeling a bit more tenderness for my mom and a bit more space and letting go, allowance for my experience and not feeling that something wrong happened. Yeah, I'm feeling a bit more in charge and empowered in this moment. I hope that's helpful for people listening. And so before this sentence, for example, I was suffering with a sense of emptiness. Or if there's a miscarriage or abortion, there's a big grief, sadness in the family, especially belonging to the parents. And you might grow up in this environment and think, gosh, I'm sad and I can't explain why, or anxious, and feeling guilty about being alive. A lot of people have this guilt. And often that sadness and grief belongs to the parents. I see this time and time again, and many of you will recognize that some of the emotions you're carrying are not yours. You're carrying them on behalf of somebody else. So you can say, dear mom, dear dad, I see you're hurting. I see you're grieving. We lost a family member. You know, your grief, mom, is too big to bear alone. I will carry this with you. Let me share this with you. And when you say, let me share this with you, get awareness. Oh my God, it doesn't make sense for me to share this with you. I have my own grief that I need to process my own way. It's not mine to carry. So you can say, let me share this with you. And then you can realize that and say, actually, I realize I have my grief for my missing sibling. Your grief belongs to you, mom. Please forgive me if I look at my own grief and allow you to bear what belongs to you. When you say that sentence, that's a beautiful act of respect. And you feel the integrity restored in the family system. And when you respect your mom or your dad in that way, in that powerful way, you restore integrity within your own heart. And I see time and time again, self-esteem just come back. Of course, it takes work and practice, but this is the root cause of, anxiety, depression, low self-esteem is these sort of entanglements. Or if, mom is neglected by dad, or there's an alcoholic in the family, mom, you think, oh gosh, I don't deserve happiness. This is the normal expression of love is maybe violence, alcoholism, etc. So I will be drawn to an alcoholic partner or a violent partner sometimes, thinking, mom didn't get better than this. Who am I to, enjoy life? And that's a big one. Many people feel guilty about enjoying life if their parents suffered, if they worked too hard, if they experienced poverty. Who am I to enjoy my life if my parents suffered? I carry this burden with you till I die, dear parents. And you get aware, you become aware of the immense amount of loyalty you have towards your parents and what it's costing you. And most parents want their children to thrive and have a fulfilled life, to live what they couldn't accomplish or achieve. And these sentences help you achieve that or fulfill that dream of your parents. It's paradoxical because we think we have to serve our parents' misery, but most parents want the opposite, for us to be free again.
I love that you just shared that last part. That got me all teary-eyed over here. It definitely triggered something in me in my relationship with my father, and I hope this helps people watching right now. But my father was an alcoholic from the time he was, I don't know, let's say in his 20s. And, my parents split up when I was about 9, and he continued on that path of alcoholism and a lot of mental health challenges until he died at 66. So when I was 25, he passed away from end stage alcoholism. And gosh, like sometimes really I'm so sad about his journey and sad about how alone he was and sad that he so destroyed his body in the end, to the point of it totally failed him. So I never really thought about that holding
Mm.
on to his pain out of some kind of respect or honor to him, as opposed to not choosing to go down that same path and be happy and not be an alcoholic and all those kinds of things. So yeah, thank you for that.
A pleasure, Andy. And yeah, I invite you to really feel that loyalty and love. Don't make it wrong. Yeah, and those of you listening who are resonating with something, don't make your loyalty wrong. Become aware of it. The awareness itself restores love in a different way towards your father. Exactly that feeling. I feel some movement in the air, and I think it's happening for you. So I'm super sensitive, so things are moving.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I so appreciate that. And man, we've talked many, many times, and I don't think that's ever come up for me before in all of our conversations. So I appreciate that and hope people also are getting a lot out of taking that and putting it into their own life and whatever their experience is. So I appreciate that. And okay, so homeopathy. Can you, before we start running low on time, why don't we share a little bit about that? How does homeopathy help someone who has had ancestral trauma, childhood trauma, what have you?
Okay, so I have lots of homeopathic remedies listed in my online course. So if I'm going a bit fast, just get the course. It's all there for you, okay? So homeopathy is a form of energetic medicine. It's made by diluting substances multiple times, substance from nature. It could be minerals, saliva, plant products, whatever. You take a small amount of it and dilute it multiple times. So you have the vibration of the original substance, not the actual physical substance. So it works on a frequency level, yeah, vibration level. And because our emotions and our traumas are energetic, yeah, it's a vibration. Homeopathy has the power to reach that vibration much more effectively than suppressing emotions with pharmaceuticals and just herbs. Herbs are great. Pharmaceuticals are great at some times because they actually save our lives. But we need to heal the root cause. And the root cause is done through family constellations therapy, psychotherapy. So I do the Gestalt, EMDR, somatic, etc., somatic experiencing, and homeopathy. Homeopathy, because it's so unique, and I'm going to explain that just now, and it's vibrational, it has the power to resolve trauma more fully than just using psychotherapy alone. Why is that? In psychotherapy, we often talk about piece by piece of a traumatic experience. Yeah. Abandonment. Okay, I felt lonely, work with the loneliness. Then there's the anger towards the father or the mother. Yeah. There's multiple things we need to work on. In homeopathy, I choose a pill based on your entire set of symptoms and the type of trauma you had. Okay? So, for example, if you're abandoned by your mom as a child, some people might go into a deep grief, resentment, headaches, and a mistrust for people. Other people might go into anxiety, tremors, fear of abandonment, just uncertain nature. You see, each person is different now, the way they're reacting, even though the trauma is the same. So in homeopathy, I'll look at your entire picture first. So for a person who's resentful, sad, melancholic, there's a remedy called Natrum muriaticum. Okay, that will give. And it's also good for abandonment or loss of a loved one. Versus if somebody comes very anxious, tearful, they've gone through a breakup or lost a parent or a loved one, and they have a sense of lump in their throat, the remedy to choose is Ignatia Imara, right? And so because I'm choosing a remedy that's encompassing the totality of your symptoms, I'm likely to complete the whole cure with a single remedy, which is different from working layer by layer in trauma therapy. And that's why I always encourage people to use homeopathy in conjunction with psychotherapy because you heal much faster and more completely. And homeopathy has the power to heal trauma from the past. So there's in the course I listed remedies for physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, financial stress, fighting between your parents. There's remedies for that as well. So I've had clients with chronic constipation, and we've tried liver detox. We've tried the typical. So there's also liver remedies that I use in the course, like Nux vomica and Lycopodium, but those didn't work, right? Constipation is often a lack of bile flow. And then I gave the client graphites, a remedy that's also for constipation, but also for stress after parents fight, to simplify it. Andy, boom, one dose, things started moving. So she continued the graphites and like a miracle cure. So that's the beauty of homeopathy, both for emotional symptoms and physical symptoms, yeah, resulting from trauma and chronic stress. Okay. Then there's remedies particular for, so now you see the power of homeopathy because it encompasses the totality of symptoms. So if you're listening, think about your symptoms. Do you have anxiety, depression? Is it better or worse at night, morning, daytime? Do you crave hot drinks or cold drinks? Do you have certain kind of dreams? Are you fearful? Are you depressed? Are you resentful? Are you mistrustful? Are you an extrovert, an introvert? Think about these and realize you have a total picture about you. And that picture can be used by me or another homeopath to find a beautiful remedy for you. Yeah. So don't make those symptoms wrong. Think of them as gifts leading to you to a cure. Okay. And so now that you understand the totality of symptoms used in homeopathy, let's talk about anxiety and depression. We've talked about trauma, yeah, and healing trauma with homeopathy. Anxiety and depression is the same thing. So with anxiety, somebody might feel anxious worse in the evenings or worse when they're alone, versus somebody else might feel anxious when they're in social circumstances and worse in the morning. See the different pictures. Based on those different pictures, I've listed different homeopathic remedies in the course that match those pictures so you can find a remedy that's closer to your unique needs. Same as depression. So for example, aurum metallicum, I often use if somebody has, gone through a failure, feels a sense of guilt, low self-worth, maybe suicidal thoughts, yeah, is superstitious and just is obsessive in a way, like self-destructive. Or I'll use Natrum muriaticum if somebody is depressed, resentful, withdrawn, very sensitive to music. Kali phosphoricum I'll use when somebody's gone through a lot of stress and is burnt out. And they're hypersensitive to noises. They're, like jolting or something with small noises. They have insomnia. There's multiple remedies for insomnia, but Kali phos is something that I use when there's insomnia related to burnout. I also list things like phosphoric acid, which can be used for burnout, and some of the other acid remedies. Pulsatilla is an amazing remedy that's used for weepiness, clinginess. It's also good for coughs and colds for children. And I cover all of this in the course. So it's important then to just summarize: combining psychotherapy, family constellations therapy, yeah, which we do at also the retreats I'll talk about just now, and homeopathy to get a much more complete and long-term healing.
Thank you. And let's talk more about your work and how people can find out more about you. So we've got a couple buttons below linking over to all sorts of different freebies. And I know you also want to talk about your retreats. So can you share about all that?
Yeah, so there's retreats in Sardinia and other places in Europe and in Africa where we combine safaris, yoga, and emotional healing and constellation work. That's all on my website. There's also a free course there where I teach you how to heal emotions, anxiety, depression, hormone issues, weight issues by combining emotional healing, family constellations, homeopathy, and healing the 4 pillars of your health, which are your gut, your liver, 5 pillars actually: gut, liver, adrenal system, childhood trauma, and then ancestral trauma. Yeah, so I walk you through all these pillars of health so that no matter what you have, weight issues, hormone issues, acne, eczema, anxiety, depression, burnout, you really get to the root cause. And by getting to the root cause, you'll need less supplements, less medicines, and less therapy over time.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all of that. And so everybody, there's a button below linking over to Dr. Ameet's site and another button linking over to some other resources. I believe those are webinars as well. Is that right? Is that right?
Yeah, there's free webinars or masterclasses, I call them, that really walk you through how to combine all these therapies I'm talking about for specific conditions. There's one on weight loss, there's one on anxiety, there's one on stress and burnout. There's some on hormones, there's some on parasites, there's some on brain degeneration. It's all there, all in nice master classes so you understand how to combine multiple therapies in a very simple way.
Well, thank you for all of that. You always have such amazing resources and so many. So we've got buttons below linking over to all of what Dr. Ameet just talked about. Do you have any last insights you'd like to leave us with?
Hmm. I love this part of the interview because usually there's a strong message that comes through. So let me try and connect, yeah, or channel it over. So childhood trauma is a is a misstep in life in a way. Let's just say that. Imagine you're born authentic and something doesn't doesn't happen for you, or something goes wrong, yeah, something unexpected. So sometimes it's like a lack of a resource. So instead of thinking only of what happened to you, trauma is also what didn't happen for you as well. Gabor Mate also says this actually. Yeah, your parents weren't witnessing you, weren't there for you to feel seen in your hurt, in your pain. So as you're working on trauma, I invite you to also imagine being acknowledged for the pain rather than trying to fix your brain and fix yourself. I invite you to include the suffering part in you, the part that wanted to be held, and say, I include that part in me. I give it a place in my heart. Yeah. And we do this in constellation work at the retreats as well. If mom was busy with the second child and you were the first and you didn't get to breastfeed enough or something, include the part that was angry. I give this part a place in me because then you're more in connection with your need for love and for nourishment. Yeah. So yeah, that's really include the painful parts as parts of you and give them a place in your heart and a space in your life. Because when you do that, they will naturally heal and settle down.
Wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful last words. So I so appreciate you
As well,
sharing
Andy.
those.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you,
Good to,
everyone, for listening, and God bless.
yes, great to see you as always. And thank you, Avice students, for showing up for yourself today on your own journey. We will see you all again soon. Take care.